Well, hello and welcome to the Bleary-Eyed Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. It is the morning after, is it not? How many of you stayed up last night to watch all 18, count them, 18 innings of the World Series last night in Los Angeles? I think it's the second longest World Series game in history. I can't imagine being on the field for two complete games, only to watch that home run ball sail over the center field fence, and just it must have been just a massive letdown, right? After taking the lead and then watching the Dodgers come back and tie it up, and then going into the ninth and getting out of the ninth and into the 10th and then the 11th and the 12th and then so on and so forth. And it had to be Freddie Freeman, right? For those of you that don't know, Freddie Freeman is making a career out of these walk-off home runs in the World Series. Did it last year. And let's not forget that Freddie Freeman's mom and dad are Canadian. He was born in the U.S., but his parents are Canadians. So the irony, let that sit one in, right? 18 innings. I'm pretty sure that they would have had the guy sweeping out the dugout pitching soon, because they went through just about every pitcher. Clayton Kershaw made an appearance for the Dodgers in that game. And how about Shohei Ohtani, right? 2 home runs, and I've been asking this question for the whole series: why are we pitching to them? And it seems that Jays manager John Snyder got that message, because after that he just didn't pitch to him. Did Simon say this morning he reached base 9 times last night, which is a major league record. That's a tough one, folks. I'm not going to say that the series is over, but there's still lots of games to go, and there's a long way, and the Blue Jays can certainly turn things around. But that one had to be a heartbreaker last night. The momentum has certainly swung in the favor of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and we have 2 more games in L.A. before we come home, if we go that far. Shohei Ohtani pitching tonight for the Dodgers against our good friend Mr. Bieber. So we'll see that unfold at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. And that game starts at 9 o'clock tonight, and you'll be able to listen to it right here. I made it as far as the 12th inning. I listened to the game on the radio, as I tell many of you that I do. I was doing the best of both worlds last night. I was watching some NHL hockey, watching the Ottawa Senators and the Boston Bruins last night, and had the ball game on in the background and was going back and forth with it. And then when it got into the 6th or the 7th inning, and I was done with the hockey game, I put the radio into my headphones, and I laid down in bed, which was a mistake. And sometime during the 12th inning, I think it was, I fell asleep. And I woke up at just after 4 and saw, of course, that the Dodgers had won the game in the 18th inning. I was just talking to a number of friends and colleagues in the building here, and there's a lot of people that stayed up. There's a lot of people that are pretty tired today, staying up till, I think it was, just after 4 by the time all was said and done. So hopefully the Blue Jays can turn things around and steal a win in Los Angeles tonight. Of course, Game 4 and 5 are in L.A. before the series returns back to Toronto. And as always, you'll catch all the action live right here on 95.7 News Radio. It was downright blustery out there this morning, wasn't it? With that wind and the rain. It was driving, at least when I came in. It looks like it's stopped now. In fact, I saw the sun peek through the clouds there a few minutes ago. It looks like we're living up to what the forecast is reading. It's going to start to clear off later this afternoon. Chance of a shower mixing in there as always. Tomorrow looks like it's going to be a pretty good day. We'll see a mix of sun and cloud, but the news isn't any better than it was yesterday for Halloween and for those trick-or-treaters. Looks like we're going to have rain, and it could be heavy at times on Friday during the day. It's supposed to taper off around trick-or-treating time, and of course, we'll keep an eye on that for you. And Alistair, our weather specialist, will be here on Friday to give us the very latest for your little ones as they get ready for their annual pilgrimage around the neighborhood looking for those sweet treats. That all being said, it might be rubber boots and umbrellas if they're heading out into the Halloween night. But we'll keep you updated on that one. And, of course, the big weather story right now is what's happening in Jamaica. Hurricane Melissa, still a Category 5. Can you believe that? That close to land and a Category 5 hurricane. Strongest hurricane ever to hit that island since record-keeping began, and it's like well over 100 years that they've been keeping records in Jamaica about these kind of storms. Mandatory evacuations in much of that island. People moving into shelters who can get to shelters. And they're bracing for a fairly significant storm. And if you've ever been to Jamaica, you know the topography there. It's very hilly in the middle of the island. It's very close to the sea on the edges of the island. I think the airport's only 50 feet or 100 feet above, not even that much above sea level, at least in Kingston. If you've landed at Montego Bay Airport like I have, you know that literally is on the edge of the water. So I think it's going to be rough times ahead for the people of Jamaica. And I know that those of you that have spent time on the island like I have the people of Jamaica in their thoughts today as this monster storm continues to roll through. The latest track from the Canadian Hurricane Center has the eye of Melissa well off of our shores. Doesn't look like we're going to have a direct impact from it, which is good news for us. We will see some of the moisture, however, from Hurricane Melissa, which will be subtropical by the time that she gets here. Will mix in with the system that is currently stalling over us, and that's going to bring some of that rain on Friday. So lots going on in the weather. I hope that you keep an eye on it, and again, keep the people of Jamaica and in the Caribbean in our thoughts. We're talking feet of rain. Feet. It's wow, it's just insane. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass, who as always does a fantastic job for us getting this show lined up and keeping me in line, which is not an easy task. Anyone will tell you that. The big news yesterday, outside of the Blue Jays, of course, was a bit of a shocker for me and a shocking resignation within the Progressive Conservative caucus here in Nova Scotia. If you remember back last week, the Premier very quietly shuffled his cabinet, and some long-serving cabinet ministers were shown the door, and very little was said about that. It was very interesting to me how that all rolled out. Normally, when there's a high-profile cabinet minister shuffled out of a government, there's usually a reason. There's some kind of scandal or something along those lines. But the Premier very tight-lipped about this. I think the quote that we saw late last week from the Premier on the shuffle was trying to get the right people in the right positions. And one of the stars from the Houston government was Becky Druhan, and she was shuffled out. Well, yesterday we heard from Becky Druhan, who has now left the caucus altogether. She's no longer a progressive conservative, instead choosing to sit and represent her riding of Lunenburg West, I believe it is, as an independent. Not really saying why, and I can respect that, because when you are in cabinet, there's cabinet confidentiality, and there are some pretty significant rules against divulging some of the information that you learned in that position. Been some speculation. It may be with some problems with the leadership of the party. And when you say leadership, of course, that directly puts the crosshairs on the Premier of Nova Scotia. Some files that perhaps didn't get handled the way that Becky Druhan wanted to see them handled, and had some philosophical differences with the direction that the party was going. So she decided yesterday to sit as an independent. So she will sit in the House along with Elizabeth Smith-McCrossan as an independent member of the legislature and continue with her job. We are reaching out to Becky Druhan to have her come on the show, and we'll see where we go from here. Many of you out there suggest that being an independent, at least some of the comments and emails I've read, isn't necessarily a bad thing for your jurisdiction. I know it's difficult to try and get things done bill-wise because you don't get the resources, you don't get the money, you don't get the time in the House of Commons, but you also aren't beholden to party policy that way. You can truly represent what your constituents want you to do when you're down at Province House. So we're going to reach out to Becky Druhan and try and get her on the show to talk a little bit about what's happened and where we go from here. We fielded a lot of questions, and of course Wednesday here on the program we have Dr. John Gillis, who is our resident physician, and he will be here tomorrow to answer your medical related questions we've taken a lot of emails and a lot of calls from people wondering about flu vaccines, wondering about the availability, where I should get it, when I should get it, the different types of vaccines that are out there, RSV, of course, the COVID vaccines out there. So we're going to connect up with the Pharmacy Association of Nova Scotia as part of the program today and get some answers for you with regard to that. So I hope that you can join us. And the hunger count is out, and the numbers are absolutely shocking. The number of people that are relying on food banks, new data out there showing some significant increases. That's going to be part of the show today as well. I hope that you got lots of coffee today if you stayed up and watched the Blue Jays game. I know you're all going to be a little bit bleary-eyed today, but we'll get through it, I promise. And hopefully that tonight's game, regardless of the outcome, doesn't last as long, because those are long and they're stressful, especially for fans, and I would imagine even worse for the players. And as I mentioned before, just to be absolutely clear, we will carry Game 4 tonight right here on 95.7 News Radio. We're going to take our first break here on the program, and when we come back, flu season. Pam Kennedy from the Pharmacy Association of Nova Scotia will be our guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Good morning. We're back in minutes. As I mentioned in the kickoff to the show today, we receive a lot of emails and a lot of feedback from listeners when we do the house call segment here on the program with regards to flu season and to the various viruses that are working their way around the community, and immunization and where we can get it and should we get it and who should get that and who should get this. So we thought it appropriate to welcome our next guest onto the program to give us some of that information right from the front line. And this is very happy to see this morning Pam Kennedy from the Pharmacy Association of Nova Scotia join us. Pam, how are you?
Hey, I'm well. How are you, Dan?
I am well. It is that time of year, is it not?
It definitely is. I feel like we're definitely immersed in pharmacy right now and vaccines, that's for sure.
So let's start with the flu vaccine, and that one is, everybody's been talking about for some time. I guess first question, is it available, and is it widely available for everybody?
Absolutely, yes. So flu vaccines in Nova Scotia right now are available for anyone over 6 months of age. So there's two different flu vaccines available this year, one being the standard trivalent flu vaccine for those under 65. And then we have a vaccine for flu for those over 65. That's enhanced to give a better immune response in that age group.
So it's age dependent on which vaccine you get.
That's exactly right, yes. And so vaccine appointments are, of course, available across the board for all ages. So booking, I'm sure people are curious.
Right.
So booking for flu, we get these calls all day long. But booking for flu and COVID, any of these publicly available vaccines are done the same way that they've been done since the beginning of the pandemic. So it is available to book online. So the website to book your vaccines online is just novascotia.ca/vaccination. So you can book both flu and COVID, RSV through there as well. There is a phone number that people can call. It's 833-797-7772. Of course, you can go on the Your Health NS app where you can book your appointment or see your primary care provider if you do have one. So lots of options for booking. I will add, Dan, that, sometimes you'll pop on, especially, for different times of the month, providers, including pharmacies, are allocated so much vaccine every month. So appointments are constantly being added. So if you hop on or call the number and there's nothing in your area, today, check back again tomorrow because appointments are frequently being added.
Is there any capacity to the province's pharmacy, Pam, to accommodate people who just walk in?
Yes, walk-in appointments are certainly available at some. I would definitely recommend, speaking with your pharmacy. I would say that would be the minority. Most of these appointments are being booked, on an appointment basis.
Is there any cost associated with these shots?
There is not. So flu, COVID, RSV, now shingles are all publicly funded vaccines. So flu and COVID specifically for those over 6 months of age and older, RSV for those over 75 or over 60 if they happen to be in long-term care or inpatient care in hospital, and then Shingrix available for those over 65.
You mentioned RSV a couple of times, Pam. What are the criteria for getting an RSV shot here?
Yeah, so RSV is booked the same way as flu and COVID. So RSV is new on the publicly funded list this year in community. Last year it was available for those in long-term care or inpatients over 60. But this year, really the criteria is over 75 years of age. If you're in community, RSV is certainly circulating, during this respiratory bug time of the year. Winter months. So it is now recommended that you get that RSV vaccine as well this fall, because it can, while a lot of times, like flu, COVID, RSV, sometimes they are mild and self-limited, but of course we strongly recommend vaccinations, in case more severe cases happen to occur.
Pam, I get a lot of questions about RSV vaccinations and if it's a one-time deal or do you have to get that one every year?
So RSV at this point is just indicated as a one-time dose in community, although it's new in community. So I would say stay tuned, but at this point it is indicated as just a single dose, and no follow-up booster dose is required, unlike the shingles or Shingrix, which does require that follow-up booster dose.
And for youngsters that our parents want to get them immunized, does that happen at the hospital?
Yeah, so there is an infant program. I will say in pharmacy that we are not doing the infant side of the RSV program. We're just doing, those over 75. But the infant program, I would expect they would be able to get that through primary care provider or through public health. But those are for infants under the age of 8 months old. So if they're less than 8 months and they've been born during or just entering their first RSV season, so just entering this first winter season, or those under 2 years of age that may have, other risk factors that would put them at more severe risk of that, of more severe RSV disease, that would also qualify. But to definitely reach out to either public health or to the primary care provider to see if that is available with them.
Pam, COVID, obviously the COVID vaccine is out. Is it available widely now?
It is, definitely. So we've really made an effort in pharmacy to, as much as possible, while allocations pharmacies don't exactly match between flu and COVID, we're really making a strong effort to have flu and COVID available at the same appointment. So COVID and flu appointments, in most cases, we're doing them simultaneously for those that choose to have both. If you choose to have one or the other, that's also, an option. But yes, certainly widely available. The COVID vaccine was updated this fall, still an Omicron variant, but again, available for anyone over the age of 6 months. Now, COVID, as a general rule at this point, we're doing those vaccines just one dose a year. So in the fall, there are some higher risk people that may require 2 doses, but of course, you can check in with your pharmacy team or your primary care provider when you get that dose to see if a second one would be needed.
I didn't know you could get them both at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. The first year that we started doing both COVID and flu, when they're tracking vaccine response to vaccines and how well it's being tolerated on the community level, sometimes they'll recommend in the beginning separating those doses out. For instance, this year with RSV being new in community, it is recommended to get that on its own rather than together with the rest of the vaccines. And that's just for tracking if there are any adverse, events related to those vaccines. But definitely, the vast majority of people the last couple or few years have been doing COVID and flu together at the same appointment.
You mentioned a couple of times shingles and the Shingrix vaccine. What's the deal with that one?
Yeah, so Shingrix is again also new this year. So the shingles is available for those over the age of 65. It's publicly funded, I should say. It's indicated at a younger age if you pay out of pocket, but publicly funded is over the age of 65. Again, you can book your Shingrix vaccines online. It also goes through Can Immunize, the same as COVID, flu, and RSV. Shingrix does require a second dose, 2 to 6 months following the first dose, and is certainly highly recommended. Some of the longer term effects after shingles, certainly aren't pleasant. So as much as possible to minimize your risk, we definitely encourage people to get the shingles vaccine as well. I will say allocations on that in pharmacies specifically, I can't speak for other primary care providers, but it has been, we only get allocated a certain number. So that would certainly be one of those vaccines that you would want to be checking back regularly because we're constantly putting new appointments up as allocations are released.
And I haven't made 65 yet, so if I wanted to get my shingles vaccine done, there's a cost associated with that, correct?
That is correct. Now, some private insurance plans, Dan, will cover the cost of the vaccine. And if you are without a primary care provider, the shingles vaccines, can be provided to you in pharmacy. There would be a fee associated with that. Otherwise, you could go to your primary care provider as well. But yeah, so you can check in with your insurance provider if you happen to be fortunate enough to have one to see if that would be covered for you. But it is indicated, at a younger age, just have to pay, unfortunately, out of pocket for that one.
Pam, is Shingrix a one and done as well, or do you have to do that yearly?
No, so that is a one and done at this point. So, what we see is that it does provide long-term immunity as long as you do have both of those initial doses. So the one and then followed by that booster dose 2 to 6 months later.
Any other tips for cold and flu season? Obviously, washing hands and all of the things that we got very accustomed to during the pandemic will help you avoid getting into contact with these bugs.
That's absolutely right. I feel like we really did a great job of educating ourselves during the pandemic. If you're sick or unwell, it's kind if you can still wear a mask if you're out and about to help minimize the risk of spread. Washing your hands, having hand sanitizers, especially before eating, and just trying to limit that. I have a almost 5-year-old son, and so to try to tell him to minimize the amount of times their hands are touching their face is difficult, but certainly helpful. But yeah, certainly washing your hands and trying to avoid being in those crowds to reduce the risk of spread if you happen to be feeling unwell yourself.
Pam, we're almost out of time. If anybody out there listening has any questions about vaccinations this year, it's best just to get into contact with your pharmacy, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly reach out. Pharmacy teams are here to help support. So certainly encourage you to do that if necessary. Yes.
Pam, appreciate it. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you as well, Dan. Take care.
That is Pam Kennedy from the Pharmacy Association of Nova Scotia. The vaccines are out there. They're available. You need to make an appointment. I know you can walk in, but it's probably best to make an appointment. And you can do that through all the regular sources and go in there and roll them up and get it done and avoid downtime this winter because those bugs are nasty. I've heard from people that have had whatever's floating around these days, and it's certainly is debilitating, and if you can avoid it, I know vaccines are not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but it can certainly be a preventative measure, and you won't have to deal with the much worse full-blown virus, right? We're going to stop and take a break, get an update on the news. On the other side of it, the HungerCount numbers are out, and the numbers are huge. Research Director for Food Banks Canada is Richard Matern. He'll be our guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. When we get data like this, it certainly it deflates things. It takes the life out of the program because the numbers are just just so staggering. And those numbers come to us from Food Banks Canada this time around, and it's their annual hunger count, this one 2025, of course. And some of the numbers that are included in this document are quite staggering, quite shocking. We're very pleased to welcome to the show to give us a little bit of perspective on what this is and what they mean is the research director for Food Banks Canada, and that's Richard Matern. Richard, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Now, there's a line in the release that you put out that kind of hit home for me. And it reads like this. It says, behind every food bank visit is a story. It's a parent skipping a meal so their kids can eat. It's a senior choosing between medication and groceries, a worker juggling multiple jobs and still coming up short at the end of the month. These are not outliers. This is Canada's new normal. That one kind of puts the exclamation point on this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. I think when we're talking about these numbers and the scale of the need, it's important to remember these individual stories because this is what constitute what's happening today. And and all these individuals, this is potential. These are people who have dreams and they have goals and growing hungry. You can't have a strong Canada if a quarter of the country is experiencing food insecurity.
A quarter, wow, 25%.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. What is first off? What is the hunger count? How do you go about getting this data?
So it is a point-in-time snapshot, kind of like the national census from StatsCan. It's a point-in-time snapshot that we conduct in March of every year of the food banks across the country, and clients are interviewed on a range of questions, everything from income source to family household type to where the type of housing they have and what brings them there today. So just a range of questions that give us a perspective on what are the driving forces. Why do people come to a food bank?
Some of the numbers in the 2025 report are quite large, including nationally, where we see monthly visits to food banks across the country, around 2.2 million of them. That's huge. Yeah,
so that is about double from what it was before the pandemic in 2019. And so this is the highest it's ever been. And then another key point is that 1 in 5 are now currently employed. And that's every sector of the labor market we're looking at here, just about. You're talking about everywhere from receptionists to frontline workers to people in retail. It's expanding as the cost of living has grown. You're seeing more people with employment whose wages haven't kept up.
Lots of working poor out there, that's for sure. How are the numbers look in Nova Scotia? I would imagine they're similar to what they are nationally.
Pretty much. The increase was higher than what it was nationally. You saw a 10% increase in the last year in Nova Scotia. And the big thing is a 70% increase since before the pandemic. And it's similar to what we're seeing nationally. It's hard for any kind of system to absorb that level of demand and that increase in demand in that short a period of time. So food banks have done what they can to accommodate the need, and whether it's in many cases, they've had to purchase more food to make up for the demand and the fewer donations, or if not fewer donations, but the donations just simply can't keep up. So they've had to purchase. But if they run out of budgets, which are not infinite, especially in the nonprofit sector, they've had to cut back on what they've given out. So essentially what you're seeing in Nova Scotia is what we're seeing nationally as far as the demand on the system and the strain on the system.
Monthly, 87,191 meals every month, and I would imagine that would fluctuate depending on the season and what month it is, correct?
And that's mostly meal programs, and
right.
Specifically. So that's for people who might not have a place to cook the food or are supplementing the food bank hampers, which are becoming more and more. There's a deepening level of poverty, and you mentioned that earlier with what is normal becoming normalized. The people are now needing the nonprofit sector and charities to fill the gaps in being able to, which they haven't been able to purchase food, or food has become more of a flexible expense because rent is taking much of their income. So both the food bank hampers and perhaps meal programs are becoming a greater part of their diet.
Now, obviously, we're coming into November and December, which, of course, are the traditional years where people start to think about those less fortunate. But this is a 12-month problem, right? This happens every month, not just at the end of the year and in the wintertime.
absolutely. And also what we hear is early in the winter, I would say January, February, and going into March, of course, is the utility bills are another added pressure that people are facing. So in addition to the cost of rent alone, the utility bills often keeping the electricity and the heat that often enroaches and goes into the food budget, which we're seeing more and more of. But the demand is indeed all year round.
How do people obviously are going to be shocked by these numbers, Richard. If one wanted to help, is a donation the best way to do it?
So food or funds, if they are able, to the local food bank is good. They volunteering their time if they can. That's also very, very helpful. They can help join our call, and on the front end, we can help with feeding the immediate need. On the other end, it's join our call to reduce food insecurity by 50% by 2030. Come to foodbankscanada.ca, find out more how you can do that, and read the HungerCount report, and contact your local representative, see what they're doing.
How do we reduce food insecurity? What's the solution?
Well, our key call to actions this year is in a couple areas, because the demand we're seeing in the last few years in particular, it's a combination of lack of affordability, so cumulative inflation, combined with these gaps in our social safety net. So in terms of the affordability piece, we're calling on the government to implement a groceries and essentials benefit, which would help people better afford food. And for the gaps in our social safety net, a combination of things. It's closing the gaps in our EI system, so more people who are out of work, and increasingly more people are out of work as the unemployment rate increases, are covered by EI, because many part-time casual seasonal workers are not covered by EI at this point. And then increasing the accessibility and adequacy of the Canada Disability Benefit, because far too many people who are with disabilities are dealing with food insecurity.
Richard, if somebody wants to learn more about these numbers, can dig into this report or find ways that they can help, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, so indeed, come to foodbankscanada.ca, HungerCount, and you can find the report on our website. Contact your local food bank. Feed Nova Scotia is a great organization, and they help in the network across the province. And we can definitely help to steer you in the direction and keep supporting us, because it's the communities that help keep both the helping us meet the adequate or need on the ground, and also pushing the government to change what needs to be changed.
Richard, appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
That is Richard Matern. He is the research director for Food Banks Canada. One of the numbers that jumps off the page in Nova Scotia, and this was a snapshot, I think it was March. So this is a point in time. This is a look at a specific month, but it gives you an idea of what's going on. There were 43,421 total visits to food banks during that period, and of that 43,000, there were 14,023 children that visited the food bank. It's shocking, and I don't think that it's going to get any better in the economy that we're in, and we know that food banks in Nova Scotia are always looking for help, and they do fantastic work. So if you are able to, please get out there and help them out, and hopefully we can start to see this trend start to change, but I think it'll be some time yet. Halifax is a historic town. There is absolutely no doubt about that. There has been many different books written about the history of our city, from its founding through the wars and so on and so forth. But there's a novel out there that is an interesting kind of spin on telling the story of the early days of Halifax. It's written by Bretton Loney, who is that name's familiar around here, a longtime journalist. We've seen him work with the provincial governments. We've seen a couple of his other books out there. This new book is called Unsettling Time. It's a rather unique look at a case here that happened in at least it's set around a murder that would have happened in the early days of Halifax, and through Bretton's storytelling, we get a glimpse of what it was like to live here when this was a very small little outpost. We're going to be very pleased to welcome Bretton into the studio right after the break. You are listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. I mentioned mentioned in the intro before the break that there's an awful lot of literature out there that's been written about the founding of Halifax in the early days, and I'm thinking of John Tatry's book about Cornwallis, and the list just goes on and on and on and on, and we get a look at it from a historical perspective, but this one is being told in a little bit of a different way, and I'm very pleased to welcome into the studio today, who's a very busy person these days. It's Bretton Loney, who authored the book called Unsettling Time. Bretton, how are you?
Good, thanks, Jen.
Now, this is a novel, correct? It
is, yeah.
So, can we call it historical fiction?
Yeah, absolutely historical fiction, and it is basically a time travel murder mystery.
So it takes place, or it centers around Ryan Treber, who is a SMU professor who has a bit of an accident.
Yeah, so the basics of it is Treber is a lecturer at St. Mary's, and he basically falls down as the noon hour cannon sounds from Citadel Hill,
right.
And is sort of strangely transported back to 1749 to July 1749 during the founding of Halifax.
Right, and those were the days of Edward Cornwallis and the real basic beginnings of what is now Halifax.
Yeah, I mean, I have the character literally land in Halifax as they're cutting the first streets through the city, which is the very first thing they did. I mean, the English colonists arrived to find dense Acadian forest, and they're having to cut their way to begin the city. So first they cut the city streets, and then they start to build houses. And so my character arrives, bang, right in the midst of that.
Obviously, when you do a piece of historical fiction like this, there is just an absolute ton of research that goes on in order to make these things accurate. How much research did you do on this book before you actually put pen to paper?
I spent about a year at it. I mean, people might be familiar with me if they hang around the fourth floor of the local history section of this Halifax Central Library, because I spent a lot of time there. But it was really, really interesting because I enjoy local history and enjoy history, and so it doesn't seem like work to me at all. It's a lot of enjoyment. So I spent a lot of time researching it, a lot of variety of aspects of it. Yeah.
And the book is centered around an incident that happened after this accident that sent the main character back in time.
Yeah, so it's actually I created an event. I mean, so many of the events, or many of the events in it are real events, and there are a number of real characters in it. But I create a fictitious murder and put together a team of people to investigate this murder mystery. And the gist of it is that there's a homosexual, or a man that's alleged to be a homosexual person that is killed, and because of that connection, the authorities don't want to touch the investigation of his murder. And so I put together a team, a man that sits on Cornwallis's council, this Ryan Treber, the St. Mary's person thrust into this past time, and a number of other people, Athena Dunfield, an English woman there, and her washerwoman and an Acadian character, and they investigate this murder mystery. But through that device, you're seeing a lot about the early history of Halifax, and I use a lot of historical events and some historical characters to create that.
In your mind, what was life like here in the early days when Halifax was founded, when they were just cutting the streets into the wilds?
Well, the answer, it was pretty tough, because the vast majority of people in that first round of British immigrants that came here were literally almost street people from the streets of London. And they came here because they got a great gig in their mind. And the great gig is they promised to give them a year's free food. And so for people starving on the streets of London, that sounded pretty good. But guess what? Living on the streets of London is not necessarily good training to become a pioneer, cutting down trees and living in a place that doesn't have an existing house for you to live in, and doesn't have a store, and doesn't have a pub, and a whole bunch of other things. So it was really tough, and they had no idea about what the weather would be like. So
and it was a tough winter too the first year, was it not?
It was a tough winter, very tough, a lot of freezing, a lot of very cold weather. And so for the majority of these people were Englishmen. Not exclusively, there were also some German Protestants and some Swiss Protestants, because the English wanted anyone who wasn't Catholic. So that first 2,500 people were really ill prepared for what they were going to face.
And obviously, coming to being that far separated from the homeland or the motherland, and living together in such a small community would have been a interesting dynamic. Correct?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, so it's they don't know how to be pioneers. They're fearful of the Mi'kmaq. They're fearful of the French, and they just don't know their way around. So I try to create that experience for people, right? To give them a sense of what it would have been like from the there is no George Street, or if there's a George Street, it's full of tree stumps because they just cut it. So I'm trying to give people a sense of that, of how cold it would be, about how muddy it would be, about how fearful there would be, and that kind of thing. So, and like I say, I use some real characters and fictitious characters. Cornwallis is kind of in and out of it as he would be. I use a character named Joshua Marr, who was one of our first. It was an English merchant that existed in those times. I use another guy, Captain John Gorham, who headed Gorham's Rangers, which was basically a paramilitary outfit that was hired by the English to fight some of their wars for them. And so I have a mix of fictitious characters and real characters to tell that story.
So I understand it. The original town site was founded on a river that ran kind of off of Citadel Hill, and that's kind of where this is centered, right?
Yes, absolutely. So if you can imagine, if you can imagine Grand Parade before there was anything there, it literally being cut. There's this little brook that comes down Citadel Hill. Citadel Hill is entirely wooded. Everything is entirely wooded, and so yes, I'm trying to create that in people's minds. Also, a lot of scenes featured in and around St. Paul's Church, because of course that's one of the first public buildings that's built. And so I will take you to the first, the first ever using of St. Paul's Church. I'm trying to create, like I say, a lot of the real events that shaped Halifax in the early days.
It's the oldest building still living in Halifax, right?
It's the oldest building in Halifax and was actually partially prefabricated in Boston, and then they brought it here and put it together. So it's a fascinating building, and like I say, I'm really trying to build through the murder mystery. I'm trying to introduce people to some of the characters of the real characters of Halifax, and also to experience what it would have been like in those very early days.
It must have been a struggle, and I'm very much looking forward to getting into it, Bretton. I would imagine the book is just about available everywhere, right?
Yeah, particularly at Carrefour Atlantic, in historic properties, right. The Dartmouth Book Exchange on the Cole Harbour Road, Atlantic News on Morris Street, and at the Novelty Bookstore and Gifts in Truro, and soon to be at Indigo's in around Halifax.
This isn't your first go-around with a book. Tell me a little bit about the difference between your last book and this book.
Well, so my last book was Joe Howe's Ghost, so it was telling the story of Joe Howe through his through the ghost of Joe Howe, who right. has interactions with a young government female MLA, and tells a little bit of his story and about what politics was like in his day and now. So a very different time period. Joe Howe does not make an appearance in this because even his father is not yet born by this time.
Fair enough. I often ask authors this, and we'll end on this one, Bretton. These things are I've had them referred to many times as almost like children. They kind of consume your entire life. And when they're done, it's like a big sigh. It's like, okay, it's done. Is there anything else in the pipeline that you're interested in, or perhaps starting to put together?
Yes, actually, my next book will be about Confederation, but from an Atlantic Canadian and particularly a Nova Scotian perspective. So you've always got something. You've always got the next one sort of percolating away in your mind.
Right, and Joe Howe might show up in that one.
Joe Howe might show up in that, and Mrs. Joe Howe might show up as well.
Fair enough. Bretton, as always, a pleasure, sir, and the book is called Unsettling Time, and it's available everywhere, and I am very much looking forward to reading it.
Well, thank you very much, Dan.
That is Bretton Loney, the author of the book. It's going to give you an idea of what it was like to live here before there was here, which is kind of unique, and will give you an idea of what the pioneer lifestyle really was about. We're getting ready to stop and take a break. On the other side of it, of course, it's time to open up those telephone lines. It's time for the open hour. There's a lot to discuss today, but something I'm very curious about. We ran a story yesterday here on the program, talked to somebody from the Travel Insurance Association about travel south of the border, and a large number of Canadians still saying that they're not planning to travel south to the United States this year at all. I mentioned yesterday it was very early on in the presidency of the United States, the latest presidency of the United States, in January and February of last year, when Canadians in big numbers, I might add, said that nope, they're not traveling south. Some even selling off some of their properties down south of the border. Well, we're almost a year through that now, and winter travel season's coming again, and those numbers are still playing out that Canadians are not traveling to the United States this winter at all. In fact, big numbers. Boomers particularly, who are the snowbird set, only 10% say they plan to travel south of the border. That's down well over 60% from years previous. Are you traveling to the United States this winter? Are you planning to head south? Or have you changed your travel plans and perhaps are looking at staying in Canada or going further afield? I hear that Portugal and Spain are very popular this time around. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on travel south of the border. That and whatever you want to talk about, the open hour right after the news. I'm Dan Alstrand. This is the Open Hour, and the beauty of the Open Hour is you can talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. If you want to offer your comments on last night's Blue Jays game, that's fair ball, pun intended. If you want to talk about something that we talked earlier this week or last week about, or something that we haven't touched yet, then that's an opportunity as well. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The data from that Harris poll reads like this. This was done, I think it was done in September for the Travel Health Insurance Association of Canada. If you heard the interview yesterday, you know what I speak. If you didn't, we talked to the industry association about these numbers, and the numbers are quite interesting to me. It reads that 26% of Canadians surveyed say they will be traveling to the United States. That's 26%. 37% drop from the year previous. 10% of boomers, that's those that are the, and I'm putting quotes around it, the snowbird generation. They only 10% say they'll be traveling to the United States. That's a drop of 66%. That's a lot. 44% of Generation Z say they will travel south of the border in the next 12 months. It's a drop of 18%, but by far the biggest demographic that say they will travel. Almost half say that they'll spend some time in the United States over the next little while. My question to you is, winter travel season's right around the corner. I know many of you have already made plans. Some of you may be making plans as to where you're going to spend your winter vacations this year. Are you planning to head south of the border? Are you planning to head to the United States? Or are you planning to go somewhere else? Members of my family and friends and a lot of people that I've seen comments on sites are suggesting that Europe is becoming a bigger destination, and in also more thought about Spain, more thought about Portugal this time around, rather than heading into those warm southern climes of the United States. Are you a snowbird? Are you planning to head south? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Also, the big news out of Province House yesterday was that Becky Druhan, who was turfed from cabinet a week ago, has said that she's leaving or has left the PC caucus altogether and will now sit as an independent. Not a lot of firm detail as to why Becky Druhan made that decision, but she did. Posted it on social media yesterday and said she wanted to let everybody know that she is no longer a PC member and is going to sit as an independent. Some indication that she was having some philosophical differences. Is that the right word? Maybe some concerns about the leadership of the Conservative caucus. And, of course, not naming the premier by name, but when you talk about the leader, right? Are there fractures now showing in the progressive Conservative caucus? Is the untarnishable Tim Houston starting to see a little bit of tarnish show up there? Turfing some pretty high-profile members of cabinet for really not saying why. Becky Druhan, Tory Rushton, gone. I'm interested in your thoughts on that as well. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 or whatever it is you want to talk about. That's the beauty of Open Line Radio. We'll start with Matt this morning. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How is your day going?
Oh, well, it's a bit bleary-eyed today. I was up late listening to the ball game.
Oh, man. I saw every bit of it.
Oh.
What a disappointment. I think we're one pitcher short this year. Anyway, it was a disappointment. Hopefully the boys can come back.
Yeah.
Listen, you've got so many topics you've introduced. I mean, Becky Druin, she got fired, so she quit. I mean, it is what it is.
Okay.
The travel, I have no problem traveling to the U.S. Be down there in a couple of weeks to Florida. The talk, the thought that we're hurting the U.S. by elbows up, we're not traveling is ridiculous in my view. Having said that, I spend my winters in Costa Rica, so not the U.S. But what I really want to talk about, Dan, is the HRM budgeting process.
Yep.
I don't get it. I've spent a lot of my life in professional services and dealt with budgets all my life, and I don't get their process. Like, we know how much money we have to spend.
Right.
We know what's essential: police, fire, water. You figure out how much you have to spend, and then you add on to that. You don't start by throwing everything into a bucket and then having to cut it down. I don't get their process.
Yeah, it's puzzling.
We don't have the. It's very puzzling. We don't have the money to spend $100 million over a number of years on bike lanes and trails to the Point Pleasant Park. It's just not the right time for that. I think the chief administrative officer really has to take a look at the process and rethink how they put this all together.
Well, I will say, Matt,
the process is not serving us.
I will say, Matt, that Mayor Fillmore said the very same thing. Is that obviously he is a planner by nature, but he was also an MP for a long time and dealt with a federal budget. But he said that the budgeting process is exhausting here in HRM.
Well, the way they do it is the councillors throw everything that they want into the budget,
right,
and then they argue about what comes out. Why not start with what we can afford with a zero tax increase and the essential services that we have and the growing footprint of HRM, so the infrastructure we have to put in place,
right,
and then we know how much more that we have to spend, and let them argue about where we spend it. Like, I just don't get it.
Fair point, Matt. Appreciate it, sir.
Have a great day, Dan.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The mayor last time around, when we did the budgeting process last year, said that the whole process was extremely stressful and extremely time-consuming and extremely, absolutely long and drawn out. And he has asked right after the budget to have a look at that process. A number of you, when we had this discussion last week, were suggesting that we need to run the city like a household budget, and that's very difficult, obviously, because we're unable to. The city's unable to run a deficit. I know you and I are unable to run a deficit, but we also have an idea of what our revenue is going to be. I'll give council a little bit of credit because, and I know Gloria's talked about this in the past, that we don't know what that assessed value of your property is going to be when the budget process happens. So you don't know exactly how much money's coming in. Maybe that's where the change needs to happen. Maybe we should wait or delay the budget process if it's possible to after we hear about what the assessed value is going to be, and then we'll know for sure how much money we'll have coming in based on that rate. We also obviously had a 0% increase in the rate last year. I don't think that's happening this time. And many of the councillors I've spoken to say it's going to be a very difficult process this time around. I think, folks, we're going to have to be ready for some austerity here in Nova Scotia. We're going to get an austerity budget in Ottawa in a couple of weeks. And I think we're going to get one here in HRM this time around. And I'm curious as to how well that will play politically. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. The open hour continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. welcome back. This is the Open Hour. Telephone lines wide open, everybody. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. An opportunity to chat about whatever it is on your mind, be it travel to the United States, be it the ongoing situation between Canada and the United States, and if that is impacting your decisions to head south of the border. Also, Matt, last caller, said that Becky Drouhan got fired from cabinet. That's the truth. And then quit as a result. I think there's more to this story. I really do. I think Drouhan either wouldn't do as the premier had asked, or was adamantly opposed to something his government was doing, or is about to do. And I think that is that. And again, I don't have any inside information, but that I think is the way that this all rolled out. Cabinet ministers get turfed all the time. It happens quite frequently in all forms of government, provincially, federally. They don't quit the caucus as a result after. So maybe I'm reading into the lines a little too much, but I think there's more to this story than at least we know at this point. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome James to the program. James, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning. My main reason to call is about Becky Drouhan, but just very quickly, a quick factual correction. You said the federal budget is in a couple of weeks. It's 1 week from today.
Okay. Yeah, it's
November 4th.
Oh, my goodness. We're already there. Okay, fair enough.
I know it sounds far away because it's November, but there you go.
Okay.
So, it'll be an interesting one, obviously, lots going on. Your previous caller, and I agree with your characterization. I don't think she quit in a snip, as he was implying, the caller. She got fired from cabinet, so, I'm going to take my whatever and go home, quit the caucus. I recognize I'm speculating too, but given the statement she made in her news release, it has become clear that there are some differences of principle between my views and those of leadership, unquote. That was a verbatim quote. I could see the scenario where she approached the premier and said, okay, I need a few minutes of your time to talk about this very important issue. And they may or may not have had much of a discussion. And he said, well, it's been nice having you in my cabinet, but I'm not going to do what you think is the right course on that very important issue. So I think you said earlier you are trying to get her on your show.
We are.
Great, because, she's entitled to say as much or as little as she wishes. But when someone says they left on principle, there obviously is more to the story. And I hope in the interests of, shining light where light should be shone, because, I think the provincial government, the Houston government has been criticized fairly. It's very fair to criticize them for their secrecy and their prickly nature. Don't really like criticism. I guess the premier in particular, he can, and they went to cabinet meetings every 2 weeks instead of every week, and they don't face the media as much, and just generally kind of a secretive and this. We're going to do uranium. Okay. So in other words, small nuclear reactors, they're cooperating with Ontario, trying to cooperate with Ontario on that. Right. We're going to do this massive offshore wind. Like there's a lot of stuff going on that needs careful analysis. And now she was Minister of Justice. So on the other hand, as a cabinet minister, she's entitled to have an opinion on anything, but was entitled. But it would be very interesting to know if there was something in the justice system, because now we're getting into interesting territory about who knows what. And I'm not making any accusations, but boy, it would be great if she would come on and just educate the public on what could be improved about their provincial government.
Appreciate the call, James.
I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Again, all speculation. And to be frank and to be fair, cabinet ministers are bound by a cabinet confidentiality. They can't really talk about things that happen in that cabinet room, but there has been some speculation as of late that some of this fallout, and it may not have been Becky Drew, and it may have not have been Tory Rushton, it may not even have been anything to do with it, but we do know that the provincial government has been sitting on that environmental racism report for some time and for the most part refuses to release it. And there has been some speculation that some of these changes in cabinet have been a result of that. We will do our very best to get Becky Drew on the show to try and see where we're going to go with this. And again, I get it. I understand that there are some rules that she can't reveal a lot of things, but doesn't mean we can't try, right? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Got an email from Chad, who is a frequent emailer, on my comments about boomers not going to the United States. And it reads this: fewer boomers going to the U.S., all that proves is that seniors are the only ones left foolish enough to believe the mainstream media. That sounds like he's taking a shot at y'all and at me, which is out of the ordinary for Chad. But is it a big hoax? Is this Canada-U.S. indifference just a product of the mainstream media, as Chad says it is? I don't think so. I really don't. I think Canadians are ticked off and have been ticked off for well over a year. And this most recent, I don't even know what to call it anymore, with Donald Trump and him listening to Ronald Reagan and not liking what the truth is, I think that just goes to fuel that anger. But hey, I'm in the mainstream media. Maybe I'm wrong. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. First-time caller Scott, how are you?
How you doing? First-time caller. Thank you very much for taking my call. First-time caller talking to you. I've been a big fan of Rick Howe and Todd Veinotte. And I'm going to coin Rick Howe by saying I may start, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I would like to start with is Nova Scotia Power.
Yeah. Not paying their bills.
That's where this is going. So Nova Scotia Power, the CEO of Nova Scotia Power, not Emera, but the guy that runs Nova Scotia Power.
Right.
I called in a year ago about this, and I'm sure he's had a raise since then. He makes $145,000 a week.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think Vanessa fact-checked me on that one. And the shareholders are guaranteed 9+%
yes.
off the top.
Yep, that much we know.
The security breach.
Yep.
And they're not paying their bills.
No, they're not paying their contractors.
So if you're
have
not
gone months.
paying attention,
yep.
you're not outraged.
There you go.
There is something wrong with this company, and I'm a firm believer that the government has to step in here because they want another 8 or 9% in the next couple of years, and all this adds up. They're not paying their contractors, and they say they may be able to pay their contractors
by the end of the year.
Maybe by the end of the year.
Maybe I'll only pay my utility bill by the end of the year. What do you think they'd say to that?
And I'm sure that this guy that makes $145,000 a week doesn't pay his light bill.
Fair enough. Scott?
The other thing I would just like to say quickly is that you made a comment about the government can run a deficit, but we can't.
Yeah.
How many families in this country?
I get it. On the credit card,
running in a deficit on credit cards, and they're running a deficit on their lines of credit.
But that's a very finite debt, right? It's not like you can just keep adding to it. You get to the max and you're done, right?
That's right. And then you lose your stuff.
Right. Yep.
They don't seem the government's not going to lose their stuff, but we could lose ours
for sure.
Right? What do you think about that? I'd just like some comments back, please.
Well, I think you're right, Scott. I think that to run a government like a household is tough to do, right? Because there's the budgets are huge and everything else. I get it, but they can continue to borrow, and they're going to continue to borrow. We can't.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we can't. No, the bank will say you're done,
yep.
And then if you don't pay it, then you give the keys back to the house or whatever,
or your truck or whatever. Yeah, I hear you.
Exactly.
All right, man.
Thanks very much, Todd. Dan, you're doing a good job for Todd.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Scott. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Debentures. Debentures are the way that the municipality borrows money. And they just passed a couple of weeks ago. They passed, I think it was and the numbers are probably wrong, but it was around 200 and 250 million in a debenture. The mayor told us at our anniversary broadcast that could go up as high as half of 500,000, like 550 million or 500 million rather. I'll get my numbers right. It was a long night last night. Anyway, it's quite scary, and I'll tell you, council's scared about this budget process. They really are. And I think you and I should be too. We're going to stop, take a break for the news. On the other side of it, the open hour continues. I'm going to get another cup of coffee and trying to get my numbers sorted out. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. Open hour continues. A few lines open if you want to get on. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Nicole back to the show. Nicole, how are you?
I'm well, Dan. I feel like I'm using up my weekly quota. I wasn't going to call today. But then I heard you drop the news about Becky Drouin, which I didn't see yesterday. And all of the alarm bells went off in my head because I've been highly critical of Becky Drouin. And I was highly critical of her as Minister of Education when, under her tenure as minister, she introduced the first draft of the revised Policy Code of Conduct, which explicitly removed sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and sexual misconduct protections from children, which are statutorily baked into the Education Act and part of the criminal code, right? Highly critical. And I had started firing off a lot of communication and notices at the end of October and November of 2024 to the Executive Council and Department of Education. And then come December 12th of 2024, we had the election, I believe. There was a cabinet shuffle, and she was removed as Minister of Education at that point and shuffled to Minister of Justice and Attorney General, which I couldn't understand, because when you have a statutory breach of that degree, that should not only disqualify you from getting another ministerial position, it probably should have disqualified her from running for MLA again. And I could not understand that. And what I always found really interesting with that particular situation was usually the deputies are the mainstays, and they're there across multiple administrations, regardless of party. They tend to hold the institutional knowledge. And around that time, the deputy Minister of Education was also gone by December 19th. That was Elwyn LaRue, and he was gone the same month. And that definitely made me go, because it was by May of 2025 that I started receiving correspondence from the Office of the Ombudsman when I escalated through them that this entire issue around the removal of these protections for kids had been placed under a gag order by the policy team, and no one was allowed to respond to it. So I have a lot of questions because if I'm not mistaken, Becky Drouin was also really quiet around when all of the news broke with Waterville. I may have missed something, but I don't. Do you remember her?
Not off the top, and I'm not off the top of my head. She very well may have, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, and this whole issue has still gone unresponded to. There's no one in Houston's cabinet. There's no one in the Department of Education. There's no one talking about this. No one is even going near the fact that this happened or attempted to happen, let alone the fact that all of the public documents that prove it had happened were removed from all the Center for Regional Education websites by mid-January of this year, where the full documented proof that they did that happened. It's gone. So I have a lot of questions for Becky Drouin and what happened with that and what these apparent conflicts are. Now, obviously, cabinet confidentiality, they can't talk about it. But there's a mess right now in the Houston cabinet. And I don't know what's going to happen, but it's also not lost on me during the shuffle that Minister Lohr is gone after removing the Code of Conduct process, and that Tim Houston became Minister of Energy, which to the point of the earlier caller with Nova Scotia Power monthly reminder that you don't have a contract with Nova Scotia Power, and this 9% rate or 9% shareholder guarantee.
The guarantee, yep.
Is tied to the former Utility and Review Board, the Energy Tribunal, whatever they're called now.
Yep.
That's part of their mandate to ensure that we have investment in Nova Scotia, and their regulations and their mandates are governed by Tim Houston. So as the Minister of Energy, as the Premier, as part of the Executive Council, if we're asking him to do anything, it's not going to happen. And the biggest issue that we have in Nova Scotia in terms of energy is this block on the ability for other independent producers to sell energy in this province. And the fact that everything funnels back to the Nova Scotia Power grid, there's no options. And even when we look at all the new technologies that are out now for people to be able to start generating community-based energy solutions and infrastructure, the sky is the limit right now when it comes to technology. Yet we're locked into this monopoly that's sitting inside of the Executive Council. And we're bound to it through what appears to be really awful, non-existent contracts, through terrible contracting practices that are embedded in these regulations. So I don't know what's happening in there, Dan. I don't know if anyone's going to talk to you about it, but it's a bit of a mess in there right now.
We're going to do our very best. Nicole, appreciate your call.
Thanks, Dan.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Matthew to the show. Matthew, how are you?
Morning. I was going to talk about the question you asked about visiting the States and whatnot. I would go tomorrow. Okay. I don't care about any of... I just consider it all, it's just noise to me. I don't care. I literally don't care about any of it.
Okay.
I would go to the States. I like the States. I think it's fun. There's a lot to do down there. But it's all just noise and a distraction. And
A distraction from what, Matt?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you cut out.
A distraction from what? If it's a distraction, you're trying to distract people away from something. What's the distraction from?
From Canadian issues. Why is the CBC talking about Donald Trump and not talking about Mark Carney? Why? It doesn't... I
have to ask them. I don't know.
It doesn't make sense. Well, exactly. So our government loves it. They thrive on this. You can't tell me that they don't like this, because the news is covering Donald Trump, not Mark Carney. Our leader is Mark Carney, not Donald Trump.
Get it.
Yep. And people are just going to... Trump. It's this obsession, almost an addiction people have. Meanwhile, Brookfield just signed an $80 billion deal with the United States government today.
Didn't see that, did they?
$80 billion deal, yes, with the United States government. So Brookfield just signed a deal with Donald Trump, but nobody will talk about that probably. They'll talk about Donald Trump, something else he said today. And to me, I don't care at all. I would visit the States without hesitation.
All right, Matthew, appreciate the call, sir.
Have a
good
nice
one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's take one more call here before we have to take the next break. We welcome Barbara to the show. Barbara, how are you?
Hi. I'm pretty good, except a little bit of a big gripe with Bell these days.
Uh-oh.
My husband and I, since last Thursday, have been on the phone several times, painful discussions with technicians. I would say at least 20 phone calls, given time. Yeah, our Wi-Fi and TV, and we're in a condo, and two others that I know of have had theirs out. First, we were told there was an outage and it would be back online, I don't know, that evening or something, and never came on. Then we were given a timeline the next morning. It just went on and on since last Thursday. We managed to get our TV in, don't ask me why, for the Jays game, the first game. And after that, dead. And nobody else got that. I don't know. I don't understand it. So, and we were told over and over that there's an outage and given timelines. And like I said, we were speaking to people in Morocco, in the Philippines, giving the same info over and over. It's just the lack of service. We have, it's not just about a World Series. It's the internet. It's just the lack of service. And we're paying a fortune to them.
Barbara,
So then,
if you don't mind me asking, where's your condo? Is it in Halifax?
In Bedford.
Really?
And so we've been on the phone, like I said, we've been to the loyalty program. We've been to anyone we could speak to, but not anyone that can tell us what's going on, except that there's an outage and giving us another time. Reboot. We have spent so much of our time on this. So the icing on the cake was today we decided to quit Bell after probably 30 years with Bell on different moves that we've made around the country. And on top of that, so our next billing, she told my husband, will not include a credit for the time that we have not had any service. We will be billed fully.
Well, that doesn't sound
really
right.
Drove me to, no, I'm going to be calling back to them, but he was talking to Loyalty. She was in Morocco, and he talked to her she just kept wanting us to somehow stay on and giving explanations, and he was trying to tell her we're quitting. And then we get told that, and I just thought, how can you pay for a service you didn't get?
Right, that doesn't make sense.
And also, and being a condo and just being told, it's like we feel we were being lied to all along. And it's if you just knew how many, and my husband has held his patience, believe me. And we have listened to the game on the radio station, thank God for that. But that's not what it's all about, just World Series, even though it is a huge thing. Right. But it's just this lack of service with corporations and how much we're paying. And we are seniors and our budget's limited. And we know we've got taxes going up. We've got maintenance fees going up, and I know there's a single widow up above me that really came down here almost in tears because she misses her TV. And it's just a sin. And they told her modem was burnt out. And that's not. And then we get told it's an outage. And the lady down the hall gets told it's an outage. And it's just like, does anyone know what's going on? And is there one? And we could trying to find a person we could talk to. We went into Bell Alliant office, and he said they don't tell us anything. We can't help you.
Wow.
Anyway, that's we've had it with them. I don't know what we'll do. We don't care. We'll listen to the radio, and I'll use my cell phone. But anyway,
sorry about that, Barbara. That's got to be awful. I appreciate you calling in.
Well, and then just the comment with Nicole, corporations are running us, and we've put ourselves in this box, and it's shareholders, it's all that, and that's what's happened, and it's not going to get much better, I'm afraid. Anyway,
best of luck, all right?
Listening.
Thanks for calling.
Okay,
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Open hour continues after the break. Welcome back. The open hour continues here on the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dan?
Good, sir. What's on your mind today?
Right. Were you up till 4 o'clock this morning?
I fell asleep. I was listening on the radio, and I put my headphones in, and I fell asleep in the 12th inning, so I missed the end of the game.
Well, I'm not a sports fan, but I had to see that one, and I was up till 4 a.m. watching it. God.
Yeah. It's
anyway.
It's good when you win those. It's terrible when you lose them.
I know. Anyway, look, you had a caller earlier, one of the first callers actually, mentioning about how the Halifax regional municipality budget is calculated and so on. And I'm going to have to talk to somebody down at the city offices there somewhere, because I don't get what the councillors are coming up with, or staff or whomever, with this 10% potential raise in the property tax rate. We all know that we get, in most cases, an increase in the assessment as well.
Yep.
So without having the assessment out yet, we don't get it till January.
Yep.
How can they forecast that they need 10%, because they don't know what the assessment's going to be?
Well, that's just it. That's always been a question I've asked. It's you're working on maybe on an assumption, or maybe you use an average of the last 5. I don't know how they work it.
Or maybe you just don't care, and you're just throwing a number out there to get people's attention. So when you pare it down to 7 or 7.5 or 6.7,
right,
then people are going to think, oh well, could have been worse, could have been the 10. Well, let's do a couple of little minor calculations here, Dan. You're a smart guy. You know how to work percentages. From what I can determine, and I'm sure there might be some place to get the exact number, but HRM generates approximately $850 million a year from property taxes. We have a budget of 1.2 to 1.3 billion somewhere. So that leaves a few $100 million that they get from other sources. What those sources are, I don't know what they all are.
Likely transfers, likely fees, those kind of things.
Yeah, chances are. So are all those amounts going up as well, or is the budget? It's like if you had two jobs, you had a part-time job and you had a full-time job. Do you expect your part-time job or your full-time job to pay the total increase you need to live, or do you kind of split it and hope that each one gives you a little bit more?
Well, that's just it, right?
They're also saying that if it's 10%, just suppose the assessment stayed flat, 10% of $850 million is $85 million. But they're saying that they need to cut, to keep the rate flat, they need to cut 40 to 50 million.
Right.
So if they're asking for 10% of 850, that's 85 million they're threatening us with, but yet they only need to cut 40 to 50. That's only half of what they're asking for in the first place that they have to cut. So how can you get away keeping a budget flat or keeping a rate flat and get rid of 40 to 50% somewhere, some cuts in the budget, but yet you're still asking for 85 million in increases on your property end? There's something that just doesn't add up there, because if they were asking for 5%, that's about $42.5 million a year on $850 million. So that figure I could understand. But also, with regards to assessments, the Canadian Real Estate Association came out the other day, I think it was last week sometime, and they stated that prices for property sales, real estate prices, are down 5% in 2025. Now, do you suppose we might get a decrease in our assessment?
No.
Not likely.
No.
Don't hold your breath.
No.
And they always use the excuse, I know when I've ever questioned them on it, they say, well, that's not what your house is worth this year. That's from last year. We have the numbers from last year to work with. Well, if they're working on last year in January, last year will be this year, 2025. And if the Real Estate Association of Canada is saying the prices are down 5%, shouldn't we get kind of rough it out, a 5% decrease in our assessment value?
One would think, but I like you said, won't hold my breath.
No, I'm not going to hold my breath either. It's totally ridiculous. But I'd like to. It'd be great if you guys could get someone on from the city that could tell the truth about why this 10%, where they're getting that number from, where the 40 or 50 million is coming from. Because if you need to increase your budget by 10%, but yet you've only got to cut it to balance it by 5%, why ask for the bloody 10% in the first place? It's just a money grab.
Those are great questions, Chris. We'll dig into it.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Last word today goes to David. David, how are you?
Great. Good morning. How are you?
I am well. What's on your mind, sir?
I won't keep you long. I know you don't have long, but just listen to the show, and I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think it is super, super expensive to live here in HRM?
Yes.
And do you think, second question, and I don't know how long you've been here, maybe not as long as I have and grew up here, but do you think amalgamation, even though it's way back in 2006, might have some toll on what's happening today?
I think it might have an impact on the value of property in the outlying areas off the peninsula. I think that don't think there's any doubt about that. But why all of a sudden? Why, if we've been amalgamated since 2006, why all of a sudden has this affordability crisis hit in the last 3 years?
And that exactly. And I mean, I live down in Eastern Passage, and I know what my house is worth, and the assessment and so on and so forth. And I look across the water into Halifax, and I'm like, what are we paying for? Like, again, the talk every day on the bike lanes and so on and so forth, and seeing what's going on. Majority of what is going on is in Halifax.
Yep.
Majority of what's taking place is in Halifax, and it's a reflection of us in the former city of Dartmouth, the county, as far out as the border for West and East Hants, all that circle down as far as Exit 6 and Hubbards, all that area. I listened to your show yesterday. A lady wondered why they don't have a pool, why they don't have this, and Tantallon is building up. It's not being paid attention to. Everything's focused in Halifax. And honestly, one of those councillors, the gentleman you had on yesterday, was like a deer in the headlights. Did you notice that he couldn't answer any questions? He was dumbfounded on answering any questions. He half the time he didn't even hear the question. You had to tell him again. Is that who's running? Is that who's sitting around this table? Is that who's running this place? Who's holding the monopoly, Dan? So many counselors? Are they running the show? Listening to Cleary on your show, last time you had him on your show, he just sounds so. It's all about me, and this is what we're going to do, and don't you tell us what to do. Is that the mentality of this council?
It should be, right? It's not why we elect them for, that's for sure.
No, but it's the same thing. They get elected over and over and over, the same people. Because what is it, a small family? Is it a small family of friends and businesses that push these people in? And, I don't have to repeat what Rick Howe says about paying attention because it's true. We need to start paying attention, and the blue-collar people, the people that work the 9-to-5 jobs, the people that are barely making it, they need to get out and vote next time and make a change because I don't know what the percentage is, but a high percentage of people around here are paying attention, really. And it's going to get worse. It's bad now, and it's going to get worse. And they can paint it whatever they want, those counselors on your show when they get on, and they can talk about this and that, but it's a mess. It's really a mess, and it's starting to close in, and pretty soon, it's going to be more than just the food bank and tents that are going to be, that pitched up that people have to stay in. People are going to have to get out of here.
All right, David, appreciate it. I'm up against the break, sir. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for the open hour. And just for point of clarification, it was 1996 that amalgamation happened, not 2006. Thanks for the emails. We're going to stop, take another break. Show's going to continue on the other side. When we come back, it's time to open up the science files with Dr. Rob Thacker. See you in a bit. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It's time now for Science Files. And in the studio with me is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. Dr. Thacker, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, Dan.
It's maybe we'll talk about the science of sleep deprivation.
It's certainly not good for you. That's very true.
And not to mention sleep deprivation, but anxiety with watching a sudden death baseball game,
the baseball.
Right?
Yeah. Tough to be a Blue Jays fan today.
Boy, there's a lot of people. I was just, in fact, a couple of colleagues over in the lunchroom that stayed up till 3 or 4 o'clock and watched the game today, and they're dragging their behinds this morning, I'll say.
No, I'm not surprised to hear that. It's a little bit like when you have a Stanley Cup game that goes into the third over period of time and you're up till 2 or 3 watching that.
Right. And then there's the ups and downs, right? And then, it's not like the game ends on a walk-off home run from Freddie Freeman, and it's not like you watch the ball go over the fence and then you fall asleep, right?
I was going to say, it's tough to go to bed after that as a Blue Jay fan. Really tough. And I mean, you can sort of lie there thinking, oh, if only they'd done this, if only they'd done that.
Or that umpire made a bad call about that, whatever. Anyway, it's the trials and tribulations of being a sports fan.
It's probably a pretty good bet that anyone who's been through that and has had like 3 hours sleep and is in at work has pretty messed up brain chemistry today because they haven't been able to go all through the resets that happen while you're asleep. With your brain chemistry.
No rapid eye movement, Dr. Rob.
Yeah, no, not good for you. Not good for you. I mean, sleep is one of those things. I mean, I sometimes feel that sleep is a little bit overblown because there are some studies that sort of show that there are people who don't need quite as much sleep as others. But if you're in bed for 12 hours, that's generally not good for you. You want to have the old maximum of 8 to 10 hours isn't too bad, right? Younger people in general, teenagers especially, do seem to need a little bit more, but the older you get, the more you seem to be able to cope with just a little bit less.
Speaking of sleep, we know that on Sunday, this coming Sunday, we begin daylight saving time.
Oh, whoop-de-doo, here we go.
And the messing around of the circadian
I'm
rhythms.
I'm a scientist, you know what I think about this, right? This is just ridiculous.
It's twice a year, Rob, every year. We do it all the time, right?
I know. We shouldn't do it. Can we stop doing it, please?
Stop changing the clocks.
I know there are people who, for business reasons, prefer the extra hours of daylight, but it's frustrating, right? Because you have the clocks going back isn't too bad,
no,
right? Because
spring is worse, much worse.
Spring is much worse because, as everyone knows, you have people who are up in the morning, they're not properly rested, and then accidents happen. This is well documented, lots of studies. And so, in general, there's a fairly significant amount of labour lost due to that change, right? And so, if we just stuck, I mean, you can make a decision: do you stick an hour ahead or an hour behind? I mean, you can do that too, right? But the change, no, I'd be much happier than a few of the same or being in the same situation as the same provinces who don't.
Yeah,
do
like
this.
Saskatchewan doesn't change their time, right? Yeah. Even though they're the square province, go figure. But anyway, a rectangle, I guess.
Rectangular.
902-405-6008-821-8255. Here's the broad question, Dr. Rob. What's happening in the world of science these days?
Well, where do we want to go? There was a bunch of things. I mean, so why don't we start with something that's a bit of a low-hanging fruit, but I think will probably interest everyone. And I've been kind of interested in this over the years, right? So started off, the first TV I remember was black and white.
Yep, me too.
Right, and then moved to color.
12 volt. I had a television that you could plug into your vehicle and watch it in the truck.
Ooh, portable TV.
Yeah. With the bunny
So,
ears and all that stuff.
Yeah, you were, advanced North Americans.
See, there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, then we moved to a color TV with the old electron gun, and so that was a big thing for us. But no remote control back then.
That was my job.
Right.
I was the remote control.
Get up and change the channel.
Rotary dial, click, 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 click.
And so then eventually we got a remote control, and that was awesome, although it was like a fight. Who controls the remote?
Right.
And so now we've gone to HD and 4K and 8K TVs. And so anyone who's interested in home theaters and whatever will know the realities that if you have a fairly big screen TV, like 60 inches or bigger than that, there really isn't much difference between having HD resolution versus having 4K or 8K. And now, well, finally, some scientists have basically come out and said that openly, and it's a report that's going around right now. But anyone who works in sort of like the home theater area has known this for some time, that really to get a benefit from a 4K or an 8K screen, you really have to be quite close to it relative to the old HD viewing distance. And so, yeah, if you're someone who's trying to save a little bit of money on your next TV, like I'm just going to come out and say it, like unless you have a real genuine reason to want 4K, there's just not that big a benefit to it.
Am I a dinosaur? I still have 1080.
So do I, right? So do I. I mean, we literally have a 1080 and it's just fine, right?
Now, I know there's a lot of people.
There's going to be a lot of people who work at this electronic sales are going to be upset with that.
Are going to take exception to that, particularly people who are, say, gamers or those kind of things where they use their consoles on the 4K.
So, but that's often about the update rate, though, rather than necessarily the resolution. So for gamers, yeah, I totally get it, because if your game you're playing slows down to like 15 frames a second, it feels horrible. Yeah. Right? So then you want the update rate to be pretty high.
But for me, and I stream a lot of my content, which I only get 1080 on anyway.
Yep.
It's fine. But then again, I look and I go to the stores, of course, and you see the setups with the curvatures and.
Well, so if they're playing like a 4K high def from a Blu-ray through the screen, then sure, you're going to see the difference because you're going to move, aren't you? Right, and that's the thing that's different, right? When you're moving around in a showroom to see this and you go up to the screen, you go, oh, that's a lot of resolution, right? It is noticeably more when you get close to it. But when you're further away, your eye resolution isn't good enough to see that, right? So you don't see it. So for most people who've got things set up at your average viewing distance, there really isn't going to be a huge benefit for a 4K, let alone an 8K, right? And yeah, okay, if you're doing all the, what is it called? Oh, brain cramp. The ultra definition standard with different levels of brightness. I'm trying to remember what it's called, right? So if you've got that, then yes, you'll see a difference with that. But that's literally because the contrast is just mind-numbing on that stuff, right? In fact, I find that stuff difficult to watch because the contrast is so incredibly high. It just sort of like pains my eyes to watch it sometimes.
A lot of people talk about blacks and the true black on the screen, right?
Yep.
Because with my 1080, if I'm streaming something, sometimes you get the shadow effect inside of the blacks and those kind of things.
Yep.
And for that kind of stuff, I understand the reason for high def, the 4Ks and the 8Ks of the world. But if you're just watching a baseball game, does it matter?
So the one area where I'll say I think it does matter is if anyone who's watched some of the newer TV shows that have been shot with basically, because we've got more and more sensitive cameras over the years, you can shoot in darker and darker light, right? And so in particular, I think it's Severance, the Apple TV show. They have a number of segments in that show that are shot with very, very dark. And so in those situations, I think, you're definitely probably going to see a distinct difference in those, because literally the tones are down in the very deep blacks to the less rich blacks.
Right.
And probably, I'll give those the newer technology the advantage there, right? But I mean, that's not most TV footage. That's a very special case.
So I guess what we're saying here, or maybe what you're saying here, Dr. Rob, is that we're at 4K, we're at 8K now. Anything, if we, because it seems that we get new technology every year, there's a new level, but anything above that we're wasting time.
I think we're already there. I mean, I'm certainly not someone who's interested in forking out for 8K, right? And I'm interested in this stuff, right? I quite like home theaters and having as big a screen as we feasibly can. I mean, do we have an 80-inch TV at home? No, we don't, right? But if you have a really, really big screen, then yes, and you watch it really, really close, like literally being in the front row at a theater, then you will see a difference because you're that close to it. But if you're like most people and you sit a fair distance away from it, then no, you're not going to.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files continues right after the break. All right, welcome back. For the bleary-eyed, this is the Science Files edition. That is Dr. Rob Thacker, and many of you probably have sore and red eyes today from watching the television last night, and I hope listening to the radio, the Blue Jays game, and Dr. Rob telling us that 4K that you have, or if you're lucky enough to have, an 8K is all you're ever going to need, right, Dr. Rob? Anyway, let's welcome.
Well, depends what you're looking at the end of the day and how close you are to it.
Right.
So.
Let's welcome Chris to the program. Chris, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Your question, please.
Well, it's more of a comment. Something that other people may have been dealing with their TVs, but I don't know if you've ever seen like a high def TV, and a lot of the movement seems kind of unnatural.
I know what you mean. Yep.
On my TV, I did some Googling, and I figured out in the clarity settings, and if you click on motion smoothing and turn it off, it kind of eliminates that, because I guess they're trying to insert frames.
Yep.
To help the smoothing
interpolated
of the
frames.
screen.
Yep.
So looks very not normal. So I turned it off on mine, and it looks great again.
So that's. I just want to get on this because I was just on YouTube the other day, and I happened to catch. There's a 60 frames per second remastered version of Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
Fantastic movie.
Right? Oh my goodness, is the end violent, though. Right? But I was watching that, and it's the same feeling when you watch it at 60 frames per second versus when you watch, I don't know, like I've seen things like... what was it? Ridley Scott did some movies at 60 frames a second, and you can just see everything, and that just feels so weird because you're used to like 24 frames a second, everything blurred out.
Right.
And it just didn't feel like the movie. Right. It was really different to watch. So yeah, these higher frame rates as well do create a different feeling when you're watching.
All right, Chris, appreciate it, sir.
You betcha. Have a good day.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Artificial intelligence.
I tried not to, yeah, sure.
Well,
sure. No, actually, I think this is a good one because, I mean, some people may have heard about this, but...
Now, I will say, for full transparency, that I am a very much a novice when it comes to AI. I don't use it a lot, particularly doing what I do on this side of the glass. When we're over on the news side of the glass, maybe have experimented with it. Don't use it to write things. Use it just to kind of see how it works.
You're paid to write, aren't you?
Right. So I use it, like everybody else would use it. I use it to get ideas. I use it. It's very good at checking spelling. I'll tell you that. Because I'm a terrible speller.
Well,
but that being said, I've had some of my own personal battles with artificial intelligence, particularly chatbots, when in the early days when we started to train them, because that's what you do. You train them. They learn as they're going along, hence is the name for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And you tell it not to do something, and it does it. And then you point out, say, hey, chatbot, I told you not to do that. Then it's, oh, my goodness, you're right. Does it ever tell you that you're wrong?
Dan, that's such a good question. I'm so impressed by the fact you brought this up. You've clearly done a lot of background research into it.
I used the chatbot to get that.
And so that is what we would call a sycophantic response, right? And the actual reality of this is that these bots have been, it's probably a bit unfair just to call them bots, but anyway, a lot of them have been trained to react like this. Now, this is a problem, right? And this is a problem for a number of reasons. But the first thing I want to point out is that as we all sort of like go into our little filters and our bubbles on social, right, which we construct ourselves to see things that we like.
With the assistance of the algorithm.
With the assistance of the algorithm as well, we're creating a situation in which we're being fed what fits with our view of the world, which is dangerous because, I mean, even as someone who is sort of like left of center, I mean, I don't particularly hide that, right? I mean, I'll talk to people who are right-wing and have those kinds of views. Absolutely, we should be talking, right? But then if you're in that situation, you're not seeing countering viewpoints, right? You can then start believing that what your particular point of view is absolutely the way everyone else sees it. It's the only way to see it. Anyone who doesn't see that is crazy, right? And that's a problem, right? And I think we're seeing more of that in society today because I go back to when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, and yes, people had very different points of view, right? In politics in the UK, but it was still overall a institution where people from differing sides would get together and talk about things and try to come up with non-partisan solutions and so on. And that's just not the world we're living in today, right? Everything is driven by confrontation. And so these sort of like sycophantic bots are just going to put that on steroids, right? Because they're going to give you what they think you want to hear, because on most issues there are, of course, two points of view. Now, it's different in most science where there are established theories and so on, but for day-to-day interpretations of things, right, that's a dangerous response to have.
Rob, let's focus on the and I will say to your point on where your leanings are, if you're left, if you're center, if you're right, if you're on the fringe, and either way, it's equally as dangerous no matter where you are politically, because you get into an echo chamber, and that's really all you hear. If you are in an echo chamber long enough and it tells you that the sky's purple, and you keep seeing that over and over again, maybe you start to think, hey, maybe the sky's purple.
Yeah, I mean, but there's also another psychological phenomenon where if you repeat something long enough to someone, they will start to believe it as well.
Right. Now, you obviously live in the world of academia, right, where research and where essay writing and papers and that kind of thing are much more prevalent than they are in my part of the world. But people are using AI out there to help them with their education, I will say, to be nice. When you have a bot that doesn't tell you that you're wrong, how dangerous is that when you're trying to learn stuff?
Oh, it's terrible, right? So, in fact, for the courses that I know, where we're actually allowing students to use AI, because, I mean, you can't not do that in today's world. I mean, there are some professors who feel quite strongly that students shouldn't be doing that. That's okay. There's a big debate about this. But in the courses where we do tell them what to use, we are telling them to tell the AI not to give them sycophantic responses, to give them matter-of-fact answers that don't play on psychological biases, right? And the fact that you have to tell them to do that, right, is problematic, right? Because if you don't do that, you are going to get things that basically scrape your previous history to a certain extent and are literally zooming in on what they think you want to do. Because don't forget that there is a model of you in these systems, right? And that should make you worry a little bit, right? Because
all of the trackers and all of the cookies
everything
and
out
everything.
there is trying to build a model of what Dan wants to see or hear, or what Rob wants to see or hear, or whoever is using
what he's
it,
more likely
right?
to buy.
Exactly, right? And so this is something that we need to be aware of, right? That you are not getting something that's level-headed. You're getting something that's bringing your biases back to you, right? And that's not good. It's really not good.
And when you, in my limited exposure with AI, when I'd ask it to do something and then I would go over it and say, well, no, that's not accurate. And then I would tell the bot, that's not accurate. The response was never, well, this is why I found it to be this way. It was, oh, you're right. Thanks for pointing that out.
Well, they haven't got anything else they can say, right? Because there's the way these systems work. It's they aren't logical, right? So when
Okay, Dr. Spock.
My nickname in high school for a short time was Spock. But anyway, so when you construct an argument, you are trying to create a rational argument most of the time, right? Now, where we get different sort of like outcomes from that is the inputs into your rational argument can be different and reflect different perspectives. That's why we can look at the same thing and come up with different interpretations, right?
Right.
So these systems don't do that. Right? They do not do that. They have literally a collection of concepts, is probably the best way to put it, that are linked together by contexts, right? And so when they actually go from that space into language, you're literally going through a bunch of mathematical operations to produce a probable output, right? And sometimes the probability is as amazingly detailed as these models are, sometimes because it's probability, you just get something that's wrong. And that's when these things do these so-called hallucinations, right? And we don't know of any way to get rid of that, right? And so we can put more layers on that try and sort of like stop it going down a wrong tree of relationships. But at the end of the day, as far as we know, this is going to be in whatever kind of AI system we build that uses this kind of self-referential or auto-regressive, to give it its technical term, auto-regressive AIs or LLMs are going to be reproducing this kind of behavior no matter how many parameters they have.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob is back after the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. See you in a bit. Welcome back. Science Files continues here on the Todd Veinotte Show. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob Thacker here to answer your science questions. Before we jump on the phones, Dr. Rob got an email question. Reads, most people think that the sun's heat is produced by burning gas. Fewer people know that nuclear fusion is the process in the sun. Fewer still know the sun doesn't have high temperature or pressure to produce fusion. So quantum tunneling is the process employed by the sun. This year's Nobel Prize in Physics awarded for quantum tunneling, discovered back in about 1983. And the emailer, Dano, is asking for your comments on it.
Okay. So there's some things that I would say that you have to sort of talk about the sort of subtle differences. And so when we say like the core of the sun is not hot, it is. It's 10 million kelvins, but that's not as hot as you would need a fusion reactor, right? And so the reality is in the sun, everything is held together by gravity. And that particular, there's what's it called? It's called the fusion triplet. There is different things you need, like, what is it? It's temperature, density, and one more thing. I can't remember. Maybe it's reaction rate. But there is the fusion triple that you need to have all of the three components to a certain product, and then you will get fusion. And so with the sun, it is slightly cooler by about an order of magnitude than the fusion reactors we're looking to build here on Earth. But it's still pretty warm by any sort of like normal sentiment, right? The surface of the sun is 6,000 degrees in general, and that's a huge surface. I mean, that's one of the things to bear in mind, that the surface of the sun is really, really huge, right? And so when you get down to the actual energy density in a region of the sun, though, it's not as much as you would think. I mean, you can get similar energy densities on the Earth. That's not impossible to do, right? So, but in terms of the quantum tunneling aspect, yes, there is an element of quantum tunneling in fusion because you've got to get over the electrostatic repulsion, right? Because you've got two protons coming together, and the electrostatics of that want to push them apart, right? And so to actually have a fusion event, you've got to be able to get them together, and so that will rely upon enough energy and then a bit of quantum tunneling as well, right? So the Nobel Prize, yes. Gosh, that was a difficult Nobel Prize to talk about because it wasn't exactly an easy concept, how we build large-scale correlation of Cooper pairs that can form a quantum tunneling system. It's like, okay, I don't really understand that very well myself.
So there you go.
So,
I don't feel so
there we
bad
go.
now.
But anyway, it is an amazing thing that they were able to demonstrate on a large macroscopic scale, not microscopic, on the scale that you and I live in, that quantum effects do happen, and that's a pretty incredible result. To be fair.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Mike to the program. Mike, how are you?
Great, thank you.
You have a question about space travel?
Yeah. So my question is, if once a spacecraft is in, like, has broken through the atmosphere and it's actually in outer space.
Yeah.
If you were to propel that to 1,000 miles an hour or whatever, and then cut the power, how long would that travel before it's slowed down and lost velocity, or would it ever?
All right. So if we sort of take... So there's so many factors here, Mike. You're just going to have to give me a little bit of time just to talk about it, right? So let's imagine that it's only the Earth in the universe and nothing else, right? So it's like going away from the Earth. We're not going to hit anything else, right? So then if you get out of the atmosphere and it's going at a certain speed, right, you're still, and if you just cut the engine, you're still going to feel the Earth's pull as you go away, right? And so to actually get away from the Earth, you have to be exceeding the escape velocity, right? So that's the thing that people often talk about. When you get into orbit, you go up, and then you put it just enough rotational, or just translational, I should say, not rotational, translation, around the Earth. So you're literally falling around the Earth, right, as you go, and that's what keeps you in orbit. You're just moving far enough so you fall down a little bit, and that's the curvature of the Earth, and you just keep on going round and so on, right? So if you cut the engine and you were going faster than the escape velocity, then you're good. You're going to leave the Earth's gravitational field, which actually technically kind of extends out to infinity, but you're just going to keep going, right? And so will that stop? If there's nothing else in the universe, no, it's not going to stop, right? Now, in the real universe, you'll head off to another star at some point somewhere out in the galaxy, and you'll have some kind of interaction with the gravitational field of that star and something like that. But the question was about what's going to happen if you're going fast enough, and the answer is you just keep on going. There's nothing that's going to slow you down in space, really.
Okay, so then when it comes to space travel, if any human even wanted to do this, could you not have a craft that was like nuclear powered, something that would last for 25, 30 years, and just propel it and then stop, and then when it, then propel it again, and just to see how far we could go? Is something like that even possible? Or
so Mike, that's exactly how they're designed, right? So if you look at sort of traveling to Mars even, which is a good example, you'll see that there are a number of instances of where you do an engine burn, but then you stop. It's not like Star Wars where people's flying around constantly. Star Wars is not a good example because people are constantly changing direction. But if you're just going in a certain direction, you want to go in a straight line, you burn, you get up to speed, and then you just go. Right, you turn it off.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why actually going to the moon versus going to the Mars, you'd be amazed, but the energy isn't all that different for those two trips.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Great question. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Could you use a nuclear reactor in space? Do we know if that would even work?
Yeah, you could. I mean, there's been a lot of people who've looked at designs of nuclear engines. As far as I know, we're not using them for propulsion anywhere, so we are using them as energy sources, nuclear energy sources.
Because you need to spit something out, right?
Exactly, right? So how would you do this? Most people talk about ion engines, where you're literally using electrical field and just pushing stuff out. That happens, you can push things out at very high speeds, you just can't push very much mass out. That's the main problem with an ion engine. But people have designed, no one's ever built it, but people have designed nuclear engines when you're literally exploding bombs at the back. Right, and so there's a very famous interplanetary design called the Daedalus Project, which is worked out by the British Planetary Society, and that has a sort of like sensibly designed nuclear power plant, for want of a better terms. But it's not something that as far as I know, people are taking particularly seriously at the moment.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back to our AI conversation. Email question from Ken. It reads, what confuses me about AI is how it can be more intelligent than humans when it is a human who wrote the code. I ask this as someone who was employed in IT for 35 years, first as a database programmer and later as a system administrator.
So, I mean, my answer to that, it's an entirely different form of quote-unquote intelligence, right? It's literally relying upon, I'm going to call it concept mapping. That's what's happening, right? And so can it be more intelligent than the people who wrote the code? Again, that kind of comes back to what you think intelligent is, because I don't think it is more intelligent than the people who wrote the code, because it can't logically reason, right? When we get AIs that do have, so this is a so-called neurosymbolic AI that Gary Marcus is constantly going on about. If we get to that, then yeah, right, that's a kind of intelligence that could actually be a little bit scary, right? And we've seen a little bit, sort of like hints of that with alpha geometry, right? And so that is as good as a gold medal Olympiast at the International Math Olympiad, right? But that was designed, as far as I can remember, by about half a dozen people, one of whom was a gold medalist at the Math Olympiad, right? So I think there's still elements of, yes, to do things really, really well, you do need really, really smart humans, right, that are doing the programming. I think that's inevitable, at least at the moment anyway.
Have we or will we ever be, I guess will we ever is a kind of a broad question.
That's a very long timeline, yeah.
But, you know, I'm thinking along the lines of cognitive AI, where it actually is actively learning. Are we there, or is it even possible without all of the things you talked about?
So to a certain extent, we already have developed algorithms that can learn simply by training themselves, right? And so that's the big sort of leap forward that we have with DeepMind and AlphaGo Zero and AlphaGo and AlphaZero for chess, right? So those two programs literally started off with zero knowledge, played themselves, had a system that would allow them to learn from playing, and then built up literally the best level of understanding of the game that we've ever seen, right? So if you have a system that is literally easily compartmentalized into a bunch of rules, and you can have the computer play itself, that's going to exceed human ability, period, right? The reason why you shouldn't get too wound up about that is that the nature of the real world has so many parameters in it, has so many possible interactions, that unless we come up with ways of really what I will call, sorry, I'm a little lost my train of thought on that, but reducing the number of degrees of freedom, reducing the complexity, right? Compression, that's the word I'm looking for, that compresses down the nature of reality into something that the computer can learn from, and then to be able to sort of like simulate those realities, right? That's another thing that's difficult with the learning algorithms that we have, right? Then I don't see how those systems are ever going to be as intelligent as humans are in those contexts.
So the Skynet version of reality that we saw in Terminator, where the machines, we developed the cyborg to learn, and then it eventually got smarter than humans, is science fiction.
So the missing link is we know how to get these things to learn, right? That is technically a solved problem, right? But we don't know how to reduce the complexity of the real world into something that a computer can literally parameterize and then run. I mean, that is actually the birth of AI. If you go back to the 50s and 60s, right, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to take the real world and encode it in some way. And that's actually really, really hard, right? So here's the amazing thing about DeepMind's alpha geometry. Geometry, right, drawing lines, angles, circles, triangles, whatever. There's not a natural way of representing that in a computer. There's no completely perfect way of representing geometric constructs in a computer. And so the fact that even though we don't have a perfect way of doing it, they've come up with a roughly good enough way of doing it to create something that can win a gold medal at the Math Olympiad. That is what some of the experts will say, well, you know, we just have to figure that out for reality.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files continues after the break. All right, a few minutes left here on the Science Files. I'm Dan Alstrand. He is Dr. Rob Thacker. Rob, obviously everybody's attention is is focusing a bit on the Caribbean these days, and Hurricane Melissa, which is a massive storm, Category 5. It'll be the strongest hurricane to make landfall in Jamaica's history, at least recorded history. These storms are always just, I would imagine a science nerd is digging through all these things, figuring how the physics of them work. We understand that it's a low pressure system that gets depressed, and that they are fed by the warm waters, particularly in the Caribbean. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on hurricanes and how dangerous these are.
So, I mean, this is all literally using the ocean as a heat engine. And the mechanism by which that gets turned into circulation is a little bit complicated. But at the end of the day, you've got stuff because you have the very, very low central pressure, which is literally pulling up warm air, pulling energy out of the ocean, and then creating a circulation, right, from that movement. And that's what gets these things just going crazy, right? And so everyone who's looking down on them, you'll see the eye wall and so on. And the size of that eye wall, if it gets really, really big, that's symptomatic of something having really, really low pressure, right? And so the bigger that eye wall region is, you've got a really powerful hurricane going off. So if you're going over warmer waters, and this is one of the differences between hurricanes versus typhoons, that if you look at the typhoons that tend to hit Asia, those often have higher wind speeds because the waters are warmer, right? And so now, as we get waters warming because of global warming, well, ta-da, the likelihood you get more powerful hurricanes is starting to come true on the basis of the statistics we have over the last 15 to 20 years, right? It's not something that's as simple as that because all of these things involve elements of chance. So you can't just sort of like plot a nice linear relationship like people would love to do, right? That's not the way these things work. And even just last year, we had a situation where we had surprisingly small number of systems come through because of all of the dust storms preventing and making the atmosphere heavier and preventing the creation of these storm systems off of Africa. But at the end of the day, it's all physics, right? And as you pump more energy into the oceans, it's inevitable that this energy will come out in these massive hurricane systems.
Also, the physics is the physics of the wind and its impact on structures and on plant life and trees. And they're talking well over 230, 295 today, kilometer an hour winds. Rob, we've never experienced anything close to that here in our part of the world. 295 kilometer an hour wind, massive destruction, right?
Yeah, I mean, if something like that hit here, there aren't going to be roofs left.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be billions of dollars damage. Right, Jamaica is going to need rebuilding after this, I very much suspect. I mean, the blessings may be whereabouts it covers over the island as it goes over, right? But you can't hide from these things, right? I mean, it's literally, even though the eye is going to go through where there's going to be a brief moment of lower winds for some people, that's quickly going to move over. And then you're going to have the rest of the system come through. I mean, the eye wall is just, the footage from the hurricane hunters is just like mind-boggling.
It is.
Right? So yeah, this is a very powerful system, and my heart goes out to the people in Jamaica. I was literally looking this morning just to see what it's likely going to do. And it's like, what was it, 75 centimeters of rain forecast?
Yeah.
Right? So that on top, when you're putting water on things, you're increasing the momentum of the system. Right. And so that's just making it even more problematic. And if you go underground, well, then you're going to have water pouring in as well. So,
and explains its storm surge. It lifts the actual level
you
of
literally
the water, right?
You literally push the water through the wind. And on top of that, if you've got low pressure, you're reducing the pressure. So it will actually have that in addition. Right. So you've got all of these pressure differences as well as literally the push that's happening from the weather system as well. And so you'll get these huge 20-foot storm surges associated with it as well.
They're talking. In fact, it just moved across the wires. They're looking now at a 13-foot or 4-meter storm surge in addition to these feet of rain.
Okay, like I'm glad it's only 13 feet because in Florida they've had 20-foot surges.
And we've had we had significant surges here when Dorian came through, and Dorian is the one I remember most because it literally came up the harbor, right?
Yeah. So, but even then, I mean, I remember watching that and thinking, like, if we get the brunt of this is going to be a pretty big surge, and certainly like historic properties and that's going to be underwater. I mean, we've seen that before with storm surges for sort of like not particularly powerful systems, right? But we were lucky, I think, with Dorian that it didn't go crazy, right? And literally, I think when you looked at the storm surge, it was sort of like more off towards Cape Breton was the biggest part of it.
And finally, Dr. Rob sends me stuff all the time, and we're just about out of time here, but developing a robot that could not only clean up after you like Rosie used to do on the Jetsons, but take care of you in your old age. Can you imagine having home care provided by a steel bucket?
I'm not terribly enthusiastic about this, although we can actually talk about the reasons why this is happening. I mean, we do have a sort of aging demographic, that's understood, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to have a slowing population size at some point, there has to be sort of like a drop-off in older people, which means you're going to have more older people to end up sort of like dying, right? So you've got to have these bubbles, right? The baby boomers being the classic example that people talk about. And so in that situation, you literally don't have enough younger people available to look after many people in sort of homes and so on. So it's inevitable that these ideas of using robots are going to become more common. I'm not so sure. I mean, it's one of these things you can say that's genuinely true is that for some people, they may actually bond with a robot and may be completely okay with it. And that's a personal choice. I'm at the same time, I'm pretty much
me and my coffee maker.
I love you. Thank you for making the coffee. So that's going to be a very personal thing. But I mean, there's obviously going to be people who don't want that and want human contact more. Right. So I don't know how we're going to work our way through that. That's a concern. And the other thing, and I will say this is one of those things where I do get concerned. Anyone who's seen significant employment of robots at their place of work will know these things break down a lot.
Just like the computers here at the radio station.
Yeah, and so I can think of a few things I've seen where people have spent more time programming these things than the things actually being operational, right? And so there's a little sort of like corollary to that. There's a number of studies that were reported with using AI where you spend more time correcting the mistakes the AI makes than you actually do getting the stuff out, right? So there's many different perspectives to this, but it's something that's going to be coming down the pipe, right? We've seen Elon Musk talking about it. You're going to see more of this, I'm afraid.
Elon Musk releasing his version of Wikipedia today.
Yeah.
A topic for another day, Dr. Thacker. Thank you, Dr. Rob. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone, for the great questions.
That is Dr. Rob Thacker. He's here every Tuesday to answer your science-related questions, and that's about going to do it for us here on the Tuesday edition of the program. My thanks to Vanessa Van Inez on the other side of the glass. Outstanding job, as always. A busy show planned for you tomorrow. Don't forget, Dr. John's here to answer your medical-related questions. Until then, everyone, please be well and be kind to one another.